The AllStar app, the #1 app in the business. UFC, Bellator, One Championship, PFL, and more. Get the app right now. Link in description. This year, you're heading into your 4th fight. You know what I mean? Like, we've known each other for a while. You've been always, I don't want to say complaining, but you've been always short of opponents. And now you have your 4th fight in 1 year. It's a pretty crazy pace, right? Not many UFC fighters are fighting 4 times a year. What are your thoughts on just getting the amount of fights you've actually wanted?
I've always wanted to be active, and I've always said, like, I want to fight 4 times in a year. And the last time I did that was when I first started my career, and I fought like 4 times in 8 or 9 months. That's pretty much the same thing happened, this year. And it's been like, I would have to say, if I had to, identify like highlights of the year, like that would be one of them. The fact that I've been able to stay super active, but still have a good amount of like, rest sort of in between camps. Because I mean, technically, I fought 4 times, but I only had 3 camps because that one was short notice, and it was like 2 fights in a month. But yeah, I mean, can't complain. Absolutely love it. Just staying active, being able to fight, and then right away like troubleshoot what went wrong, and then be able to improve and work on things, and then build on to the next camp.
When you took that short notice fight, right? Like you said, it was basically 2 fights in 1 month. What were the conversations like with your coach? You know what I mean? Because I'm pretty sure you went to your coaches and talked to them about it and taking advantage of that short notice fight, because it was a risk. You know what I mean? You took a risk by doing that.
Yeah, but with short notice fights to get to UFC, like you take them, even if you are not, unless you're like medically unable to do it, just take it. Like, I mean, my weight was like not where it was supposed to be, like nothing. I just gone to Hawaii for like 2 weeks after my last fight, and like just, stopped training, ate whatever, came back, was just getting into the groove of training again. But it's just one of those things, like when you get the call, like you just take it no matter what the circumstances are. Just because you take a fight short notice, it's more forgivable, that you don't win, rather than like if you were given a full camp, like you're just, you have the notice period. So you kind of, no excuses, get a full camp. But to get your foot in the door, you just got to go for it. So yeah, it was a no-brainer. It was like, yes, whoever it was, it would have been a yes. And it was one of those things where it's like, we don't have too much to lose. Let's just go in there and, do what we can. And it was definitely like a very kind of green sort of attempt. I got in there and I got all excited, and then there wasn't any game planning. Like, I mean, it was like Tuesday of fight week when we got together, and we're like, okay, let's think about what we're going to do. Let's study this girl. And then obviously John, our coach, has got like other guys he's cornering. So like I didn't hear from him all weekend. So it was kind of just, let's throw everything on the wall and see what sticks. There's not so much strategy, and like I didn't rep anything out. So yeah, it was an interesting experience for sure.
Yeah, it was almost just like, let's throw the kitchen sink at this girl and see what happens.
Pretty much, because we didn't have time to like study her. I didn't have time to, the whole process of like getting heat acclimated for the weight cut, the diet, the training volume, like, conditioning, none of that stuff. It was just kind of, all right, as we are, we're just going to get in there.
Yeah, and as a professional athlete, I think a lot of people that watch the sport, fans, they don't understand like so many different variables that head into a fight. Like you said, the preparation, like diet, training, strength and conditioning, even your mindset, right, could be something that can affect you. And in that Nunez fight, did you feel like, a lot of fighters talk about adrenaline dump? Did you feel that?
100%. It was like, because I found out, I got a text from my manager Danny Thursday night, like, I might have something for you, talk to the nutritionist, like I'll know tomorrow. And the next day I signed. That was a Friday before, the week before the fight, basically 1 week before. And then it was like so many papers to sign, and then medicals to do, and then it's like different things, like I got an eye exam, I gotta go get this blood test, I gotta go do this. So it's like I didn't really have much time to train even that week. So it was just dieting, weight cutting, and then getting all these different things done. Um, so it was like a lot at once with like, I'm gonna fight, but not only gonna fight, I'm gonna debut in the UFC. Not only am I debuting, I only have a week, and I'm not prepared, and like I gotta think about all the things. So it was definitely like super overwhelming, but it was just, getting your foot in the door, nothing, it's like priceless, right? So I was willing to do anything.
When you fight on the regional scene, there's expectations, but when you get into the UFC, most people haven't seen your fights before the
Yeah.
UFC. So their expectation, because you have that three letters UFC in front of your name, they expect something higher than maybe possible. You know what I mean? Because they probably don't even know it's short notice for you. To be honest
Yeah.
with you, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Like you're definitely in the spotlight. So you definitely, it's like, that was another thing too that I would always like say when I was still fighting the regional scene, and then knowing that I was going to get the call at some point. I was like, I'm trying to enjoy this as much as I can, where there's like no noise, no distractions, no hype, no media, I just get to go in there and I just get to enjoy it and have fun. And like, no one's going to know about the fight, like it's not on that world stage. Once you get in the UFC, now everyone's got an opinion and everyone wants to tell you what to do and everyone wants to like, critique you. So I knew that was going to happen. And I knew that the pressure was going to only increase from there, but you don't really know what it feels like until you have experienced it.
Do you have to do a better job of like limiting the outside noise because you're in the UFC now? Like you said, you're
Oh,
on the spotlight.
100%. Because, you know, your fight gets announced, all of a sudden they're like betting odds already, like, and then different outlets are going to post the matchup. And then you got like comments, like freaking the comments, people would come out and they'll tell you what you think, when you're going to get knocked out, who's going to win, all this stuff. So yeah, I was like, don't even look at that, like it's just because it's so much input, and it's like largely useless input that can easily get in your head because these are literally people talking about you.
Yeah, it's, I think anybody that's involved in this sport or any sports, right? Any athlete has to deal with that. But it's sometimes it's hard not to look, right? Because it's on your social media, right?
Yeah.
People will come on
Well,
there.
it's so, yeah, if it's on my page, I'll see it, but I rarely ever will like look at comments on like, accounts that just announce fights, or accounts that are just, like MMA related or UFC related. Um, I try not to go there because I know it's just like a rabbit hole if I do. So I kind of just like stay within my lane and like just read the stuff that's on my page. And I recently had to like change it so that only people who follow me can comment, because like just random people commenting like just, all kinds of stuff on like photos that like didn't even relate to anything. And it was, people that kind of just want to put you down. They don't follow you. Like at least people who follow you, like sometimes they'll interact, sometimes they won't, but they kind of want to see where you're going. And they're not going to be outrightly like disrespectful. But there's other people who like, they just don't care. They're just going to go for it. And I was like, oh, I got to change the settings on my account.
Yeah, you definitely have to, man. It's just part of the game. You gotta limit that negativity. But I'm pretty sure there's been a lot of like positive interactions online as well. You know what I mean? Do you remember
For sure.
any particular ones in the past
For,
year?
for sure. I mean, I would say that like 90% positive, but it's just so easy to just fixate on the 10%. Um, no, just people saying that like you're, especially my debut, that like you're really tough, like, you're an exciting fighter, and I can't wait to watch your next fight, and just things like that from people like all over the world. And it's just really cool and really meaningful, to know that like there are people, the fans of the sport, who like live so far away, who enjoy watching me fight.
Now, moving from your debut to your second fight against Jocelyn
Mhm.
Edwards, did everything go to plan like in preparation, or were there some obstacles that you had to overcome?
So the fight was originally at 35, and then I had some issues with trying to get down, and so we ended up changing it to 45. This was like 3 weeks out, so it was like plenty of notice. And so that was like better for me, and then the cut ended up being like super easy. So I think if I potentially could have made 35, I would have like really like had to push super hard. Because my body is kind of like I'm kind of an in-betweener where I'm sort of 140 would be great, but there's no division at 140. I'm a little small for 45 where I'm big for 35. But other than that, it was like once, it was set at 45, like I just felt a lot better. Like I was able to, feel myself better. And, the travel definitely was a bit tricky, but it wasn't like, oh, because of the travel, it affected my performance, Like, as far as I'm concerned, like, everything just went well. I felt great fight week. I trained so good. Like, my output, my intensity, my volume was really good. My mindset was good. At the end of the day, and I've talked to my coaches at length about it, like, even right after my fight, it was like, okay, what happened? What can we do better? Where were the mistakes that were made in, like, preparation, whether it's communication? And it was more just experience. Like my first 15-minute fight, was in the UFC. So prior to that, every other fight ended within, the first, second, or like partial third round. So I didn't have that experience. I didn't have that experience going 15 minutes, and seeing what it felt like to be in that third round. And I think in my mind, I was, looking at my fight before that, and the feedback that I was getting that, you got a little too wild. You went in there, you just wanted to swing and bang, and you need to kind of be more patient and like pick and poke. And so I went from one end of the extreme to like the opposite, where I'm like, okay, this is gonna be super technical. I'm just gonna look really smooth. Like I'm not gonna overcommit to anything. I'm not gonna get all wild and crazy or like get into like a dog fight. I'm just gonna, try to um, do everything perfect. And I want to make it look good. So it was like every shot that I fire has to land. The issue with that is like, yeah, the shots that I fire, percentage wise might be higher than maybe my opponent, but I'm not scoring points. And so for me, it just was like, oh, you hit someone, you want to damage them. But it's like the one thing that, and we've been working on a lot this camp, it's like point fight. Like gone are the days of MMA where everyone's just trying to knock each other out, and everyone's just swinging for the fences with like minimal defense and, trying to get the KO or the submission, and not leave it to the hands of the judges because obviously no one wants to do that. But right now, everyone's just so much more technical. You're trying to strategize against different people and try to, prey on their weaknesses a lot more, and people are moving a lot better, just more elusive, and defense is way bigger thing than it ever has been. So I just didn't really pull the trigger on like throwing volume and trying to point score. And so at the end of it, even though I kind of felt like, oh, I like hurt her, I cut her nose open, I gave her a black eye, you could already see it on her face, and like I was unmarked. That's not what they were looking for. They weren't looking for damage. They were looking for points. They were all about the significant strikes and the fact that she broke a record and that she was just, kicking me. The push kicks, kept me away, and that was a great strategy. But apart from that, it was like she'd go outside kick, inside kick, just little flicking kicks, which to me at the time I was like, oh, this is nothing. It's obviously not hurting me, so it won't count. I was freaking wrong. Like all those little things counted so much. And even though I was pressuring forward, I just wasn't throwing anything, even if it was like throwing air, like even if I wasn't touching her or I touched her guard, like it didn't, I was thinking like, okay, everything I throw has to land on her face. And that was my mistake. So that was a big lesson to be learned. And, there was a point in time after that fight where I'm like, oh my God, I didn't give it everything I had. I didn't do my best. But my perspective of the sport and what it was, what you needed to win was also a lot different at the time before I fought until after, when I rewatched the fight again, thinking like, like, doesn't damage count for something, you know? And I was more active on trying to take her down, even, you know, it was like failed attempts, but it was like I was working, trying to get her down. And then that doesn't count for anything either. So then now I'm like, all right, well, now it's point fighting. Now when I spar, I'm just like throwing combinations, even though they're not landing. I'm like flicking kicks that don't really do anything, but point, 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 you know? And, and just being busy. So, you know, that's what I'm trying to get to. It takes a lot of gas tank, obviously, to do that. Um, and, you know, if I get someone on the fence, usually I'm just sort of right away like, I want to take her down, you know, because takedowns kind of, you can lock in around with the takedown, right? But then now I'm like, no, what if I just like pressure him here? What if I'm just like chill here? Because it takes a lot of effort to take someone down. So there are different things that I'm now looking at like differently that I never would have looked at this way had it not been for what happened. Um, and also just being too, at the time, too set on the game plan and not being able to adapt. Because the game plan was to take her down and just like lay on top of her, just like her last two opponents did, right? But of course, like you can watch someone's fight tape and be like, oh yeah, I can prepare for her. But guaranteed they're better than they were. And guaranteed the mistakes that made them lose in those fights, they're obviously going to work on it. So she's obviously been working her takedown defense and being heavy with her hips and, you know, trying to make it more difficult for her to get taken down. So knowing that, I wasn't able to kind of adjust, and I should have trusted in my striking more. You know, I'm a striker, and my base is in striking. But we were training so much grappling and so much of the game plan. Take her down, get on the ground, take her down, get on the ground. That I was just like, in the third round, I'm like, if I'm going to win this fight, I got to take her down, take her to the ground. But that was absolutely not the case. Like, I could have just stood with her if I just trusted in my striking more, been a bit more busy up top, throwing kicks, you know? So that was a big lesson learned for sure. And it's like, if I got a chance to fight her again, I would love to. It's unlikely, but it's kind of like every time I think about it, I'm like, I want to fight her right now. Like, you know, I want to get that one back. And it was just, yeah, she did great. You know, her strategy, keep me away with her push kicks was great. Like, for me, I was like, oh, these surely don't count for much because they're not hurting me. There's no visible damage. But I was dead wrong. So, you know, live and you learn.
Definitely, you know, Jocelyn, she did that again in her next
Yeah.
fight against her teammate, right?
Yeah. Oh my
Because
God.
Hyon was the one that was getting into these fight of the nights, right? And then, you know, she had to change some things up, and then Jocelyn basically took advantage of that and point fighted her to a decision win as well. So yeah, and I'm pretty sure Hyun's gonna be, you know, coming into her next fight with the same mentality as what you just explained of like, yeah, we gotta switch some things up. But yeah, a lot of people thought you won that fight as well. You know, like in the back, because I was there. People were like,
Yeah.
that's kind of a weird decision. I don't think it was
Yeah.
unanimous.
Yeah, when so I lost the third round, but I was like, gosh, I feel like I got the first two. And then, you know, when they like announced like unanimous, I was like, unanimous. I was like, I would have thought that was a split, but like, all right, unanimous, like I'll win a unanimous, you know? And then they gave it to her and I was like, that's crazy. It's like I would have thought like if I'd lost, it would have been a split at least, you know. But the fact that it was unanimous and there was a judge that scored the first round to her after I dropped her and almost gotten her was also like super bizarre to me. And because you black out, right? There's so much adrenaline going. Like I just can't. At the second they read out the result, I was like, oh my god, I fucked up. Like I just, you know, I lost that fight, and I just didn't remember all the things that I did right. I just remembered losing the third round, and I'm like, oh, I lost the third round. Like, that's why, you know? I even forgot I dropped her. And then until, like, the adrenaline started dropping and getting low, and then I started talking to my manager and coach, and then they're like, yeah, it was really close. Super close. Like, she finished strong, but you did drop her in the first. And then, you know, all these different MMA news outlets that were saying that, you know, a lot of them thought that I won too. And then the more I watched the fight, it was like I was so upset at myself and like borderline depressed, right? Because you just lost, and I'm like, came all the way to Asia just fucking lose this thing. And I've watched the fight like maybe 4 times since then. Every time I watch it, the less shitty I feel about myself because I'm like, dude, like I did I didn't I didn't fight super well, but I did good. And there are a lot of good things that I did, and it was a really close fight. And every time I watched it, I'm like, I don't know, I did more damage, you know? So it's one of those things where it's like the 3 people that I had to convince in that room happened to just see it her way when like a lot of other people saw it my way. But that's just the sport, right? You can't just be like, oh, the judges' fault. It's like kind of on me. Like I always want to know that the ball's in my court and I can adjust and make things, change things so that I can do better next time. So it's like, I just wasn't convincing enough, and that's fine because this time I'm gonna make sure that I convince them.
Is it good that you're back in at the Apex? You're fighting in Las Vegas
Oh,
instead of, because
100%.
you experienced the big crowd, the big arena, and now you're gonna get back. You could sleep in your bed, so to say, and wake up
Oh,
and go fight.
that's yeah. The great thing about traveling, it's like I had to do it because it was Singapore, right? It was the first pay-per-view event in Southeast Asia and the first Asia card like since the pandemic. So that was like a big deal for me. And it's always been a dream of mine to fight in Singapore. So all those things just made it like I gotta go do this. But yeah, the travel and like the waking up at 3 a.m. every morning and like you know the having to pay for the extra corner to come out and then all these things like net I took home just so little compared to like first obviously and you don't get the win bonus. The fact that it's here, I don't have to pay for anyone's travel. I don't have to pay extra costs for anything. Like I literally am not even staying at the fighter hotel. I'm staying at home because I live 5 minutes from the Apex. So like I'm not gonna go all the way to the strip to the hotel just to like take a bus over here. It's great. It's nice because it's like a Vegas card. It's kind of a quiet card right before the big pay-per-view at Madison Square Garden. People will be watching, but not really. It's kind of one of those things where there's a part of me that really appreciates that I can do this one in peace, and just like no noise, get my mind right. There's not going to be, you know, it's not a super hyped up card. Like less people are probably going to be paying attention, but it's good for me to kind of just, all right, getting back into things, like stay focused and undistracted.
What are your expectations from yourself in this upcoming fight? It seems like you've learned so much in your first 2 UFC fights.
Yeah, better decision making. Like it all comes down to decision making. Like you can learn all the techniques that you want, but if you can't make the right decision at the time that it counts, you're not going to be able to execute any of those techniques. And decision making is, it, it it's dictated by my confidence going in, my mindset, how well I'm able to manage my nerves, how well I'm able to communicate with my corner, how well I'm able to focus and be present in the moment and not, let thoughts and feelings and doubts distract me from what's going on in front of me because it's like I can go to the gym. Like you watch me train in the gym, you're like, damn, like I look good in the gym, because there's no pressure. But it's like, how do you handle that pressure? And further yet, how do you handle the pressure, but also pull out the right tools at the times they're needed? And that's all fight IQ. It's not about being the most athletic or the most fit, or it's like if you don't have the fitness, you got to be able to regulate your gas tank, right? And it's like no matter how fit someone is, if you're going against an experienced person that knows how to regulate their gas tank, like they could beat you very well, even though they are not as fit or not as explosive or athletic. So understanding myself better and how it feels to be in that 15-minute fight, knowing when to pull the trigger, when to back off, and just a general better understanding of how to win a fight, what the judges might be looking for, and it's like fights I used to go into, I'm like, I want to finish this person. But if you're thinking about the finish and you're doing things and the finish doesn't happen, there's a chance that you lose the fight attempting those things because you're not thinking about point scoring now. So now I'm all about the point scoring. So hopefully I'll be scoring a shit ton of points. And just making better decisions. And that's all it is. It's just experience. Like I'm green. Even my coach said, he's like, you're pretty green. Like you're going to be doing your developing at the highest level. And that's hard, because people are going to have expectations of you. And you're going to be in places, you're going to be getting to places you've never been before. And 15-minute fights were just places I've never been before. The first one was a 15-minute fight, short notice. The second one was like a 15-minute fight with a full camp. And so I was just like, man, I had a full camp for this girl. And then I freaking, like, what the hell? And like being down on myself. But, the learning experience is just priceless.
November 5th, UFC Fight Night Las Vegas. If you want to know more about the event, go download the AllStar app in the description. Ramona, thank you so much for the time. And I can't wait to see a more developed, like you said, fight IQ and taking those experiences and performing at the highest level. It is a tough job to learn everything.
Yeah, you're learning as you go. You're making mistakes in front of people as you go. So yeah, I'm excited. Like, I have no doubt that this is going to be better than I've ever looked. Just all these little details that we've been sharpening